We've been using the word progressions off and on throughout this module, and as we mentioned at the beginning, learning is a little bit messy, and this is one of those opportunities for us to spiral back and delve a little bit more deeply into this whole concept of progression. So you'll notice on the slide a definition that has guided our work in developing these progressions. We see a progression as a purposeful sequencing of leadership performance expectations across developmental stages, so across a continuum. Furthermore, we see these descriptions of increasingly sophisticated ways of thinking and ways of enacting leadership practices. So that is what you are seeing when you look at a progression. The idea of a progression is not anything new. I would imagine many of you are familiar with a variety of different types of progressions. For example, I know some of your districts are working with the Marzano framework, for example. That is a form of a rubric or a progression. Some of you may be working with the Iowa instructional framework. Again, another parallel to these progressions. And finally, some of you may be working with the Danielson model for your staff. Again, another parallel to our progressions. So the concept and the idea of a progression is really nothing new. I would imagine, again, many of you can point to parallels in your own work where you've utilized some form of a progression, perhaps a rubric when you were a student or when you were teaching. Let's take a deeper dive into these progressions and how you might understand and interpret and read these progressions. So you'll notice on your slide that we've chosen Standard 3, Equity and Cultural Responsiveness. So at the top of the slide, you see the standard, Equity and Cultural Responsiveness. You see the statement that explicates what this standard is all about. And then you'll notice the next row does not meet standard and then meets the standard. The structure speaks to and communicates this emphasis on positive school leadership, this presumption of competence. So really, any of those 3 developmental columns to the right, you're meeting the standard. We don't want our time and energy to be focused on, am I meeting the standard? Am I not meeting the standard? We want to engage in that conversation, and then let's deep dive. Where does my district need me to focus my time and attention? And when I look at these columns, where's my next level of leadership? So again, am I developing? Am I effective? What does it look like as I transition from one developmental level to the next? And by the way, these should not be read as a checklist. So it's not as though I have to check off everything in the developing column to be in the effective column. It's not like I'm having this conversation where, oh, I've got 4 in the developing, I've got 4 in the effective. Where am I? Am I developing or effective? Circle the space in between. This is about the conversation. This is about noticing, oh gosh, I have an opportunity here. I have a passion in Standard 3, and oh, here's an opportunity I have to grow and develop. And oh yes, when I look to that next column, okay, I see what that can look like. And my admin team and I are going to have some conversations about, well, what does this look like and sound like and feel like in our district? What might be some of the artifacts and the evidence that we can say, speak to my growth and development relative to effective column, relative to Standard 3. So again, we have that conversation as you see, meeting the standard, all 3 columns to the right. I would also note that it is important to read the progressions with an understanding of the definitions of effectiveness. So in our efforts, in the design team's efforts to be as succinct as possible in the progressions, we're counting on the end user to be conscious of the definitions of effectiveness as you read each of those columns. Together, they make meaning for unpacking this standard. What does this standard really mean? You'll notice I didn't say much about the ineffective column because really, if I'm not effective, if I'm in trouble as a leader, that's really a separate conversation. These progressions are, again, about the growth and development, my next level of leadership. How can I self-reflect? And then what learning tools do I need to help myself advance to that next level of leadership? And maybe I'm mostly in the effective column, but I have a couple things in that developing. That might be a target for my Iowa Individual Administrator Professional Development Plan. And so, again, you'll notice these are aspirational. That highly effective column is highly aspirational. And I'd invite you to think about, as you self-reflect and you engage in coaching conversations, to think about, where do I tend to live on a daily basis? Where do I tend to live on a daily basis in my leadership? We all visit highly effective. Do I live there on a daily basis? Where do I tend to live on a daily basis? And then what would it take me to get to that next level of leadership? So again, this is just one way in which you might unpack that to a small degree, and how these progressions might be unpacked, what they look like, how they work, how they might be operationalized.